Vegas. It's Zandra Polard with It's Where I Am. Today our guests are Assistant Chief John Stevenson of Las Vegas Fire and Rescue, Alexandria Brown, Executive Director of CHIPS, which stands for
Community Health Improvement Programs.
Thank you. And then also we have celebrity guest, singer and actor Marc Nelson.
Hello, hello.
Thank you all for being here. So first I want to start with announcements, giving you a shout out to Kelly Nelson at the City of Las Vegas. Thank you for sending me information for the Veterans Community Fair, Job Fair, which is October 19th. It's from 10 a.m. till till 2 o'clock. Children are welcome, so please come down to the City of Las Vegas from 10 till 2 on Saturday, October 19th, and come out to the resource fair to apply for employment. Now, I'd like to first talk with Assistant Chief Stevenson.
Morning.
Good morning. So I wanted to talk about the importance of first responders and the community.
Okay.
So my brother, Zandra Polard, is a smoke diver in Gwinnett County, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And he helped me to formulate these questions
Okay.
because of some of the irritation he has when people don't follow the rules, right?
Got it. Okay.
So, when you hear an ambulance, what should you do?
You should pull to the right, please. Oh, please, oh, please. We appreciate the intent when you stop in the middle of the lane because you think you're helping. But in reality, you're really not. So the pull to the right is always the best way, to go. No, it's the only way to go. Otherwise, it really does cause delays. And if half the traffic is pulling to the right, and the other half, does what they think is the courteous thing and just stopping where they are. It's not really about allowing the unit to pass. You really have to make space because the space is the premium.
And don't ride on the side of the ambulance.
No, don't ride it. Don't trail it. None of those things, because those can all turn on you.
Okay, and so I also want to say, please pay attention to our discussion this morning because, courteous of Marc Nelson, we will have 2 ticket giveaways for his concert next Friday.
Yes, indeed. I'll stop trailing the ambulance.
That's a good call.
Yes, so it'll be on October 11th.
October 11th at the Fremont Country Club. The show is called Men of Vocals, starring Stokely from Mint Conditions. It's going to be called One Night with Stokely. Faison Love, the comedian, formerly known as Big Worm, he'll be hosting the show, and it'll have myself, As Yet, Troop, and a few others. Actually, we're also going to have Shakespeare, a really dope duo. So yeah.
Awesome.
That's cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, so pay attention. Later on, I'll be asking a question. If you get the question right, you can win those 2 tickets.
Yes.
So I want to continue on with understanding first responders' responsibilities and helping the community to understand that it's not like what you see on television.
Right.
So when you come onto a scene, what should people not do?
So the first thing they should not assume is that just like on TV, that the first responders run to the emergency. That is the last thing I want my firefighters doing is running to the scene, because I want them as composed as possible. It'd be something like, I would never want you to run up to your SAT exam or your it's like that. I want you focused and calm going into it, because there are so many factors that need to be taken in when they're doing a patient assessment. So the one thing I've seen a lot in my career is the misunderstanding that the crew that is walking up is not taking that emergency seriously, which is really not the case. They're keeping their heads, and wits about them when they go up to the scene. They take all of it into consideration. So that if there was a takeaway that I'd want folks to know, that is starkly different from TV, that the run up just does not happen.
That's exactly what my brother said. Thank you for that. Also, we discussed house conditions and safety. So he had mentioned like homes that are like kind of like hoarder homes or unsafe conditions, and how they have to maneuver in that space. Can you talk about that? Like, if someone does have a space that is cluttered, how would your team handle that?
Well, first off, I would say that the vast majority, I don't have a hard number, but I could comfortably say like the 80 to 90% of the fires that I've been on were almost always with somewhat messy or somewhat unkempt houses or poorly maintained houses. I can't think but a few fires I went to where there was a clean house and well maintained. And if that was the case, it was usually just a wiring malfunction or maybe a candle accident or something like that. But good home maintenance and management is really kind of underappreciated for the role it plays in fires. Especially when you think about a house that's on the crowded side and kind of cluttered. Those are especially dangerous. I think about the space heater fires, where you'll have a family that's kind of spread out, and the clutter is such whereas a blanket gets a little too close to that space heater late in the night, and now you got just a disaster and a catastrophe. It is not to make a value statement about the people, but it is to say that fire needs fuel, and the fuel that it needs is whatever blanket, whatever pillows, whatever newspapers that you're keeping from the 70s, and the like. It just needs that fuel. And cleaner houses, the less cluttered houses, just don't offer the fuel to catch fire like a more cluttered house might.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand. So I'd like to bring Lex into the conversation. And so I know oftentimes, I'm sorry, Lex, before I get to you, I also wanted to mention interference from neighbors, bystanders, and family members. What should they not do when there is a first responder on the scene? So not interfere, right?
Yeah, but I'd want to back up to where I think the thinking is that kind of drives interference. For some folks, there's a fear that the first responder is not taking the emergency as seriously as they would hope they would. And so then that causes them to interject, like, check our meds, why aren't you checking our blood pressure, why aren't you doing this? And then they start quizzing and questioning, the first responders as they're doing their thing. And the precursor to that, I believe, is the idea that somehow the level of concern that the first responder has, for their loved one, isn't as high as the level of concern that the family member might have, or the gap is too big between levels of concern. And so I can think of times when I've shown up on scene and I've had, folks threaten me, like, if you don't do this and this, I'm gonna kick this, I'm gonna whoop that. It's actually kind of a funny story. It was a big old party, I grew up on the west side, it was on the west side, and a guy who'd been drinking a little too much, he decided he's gonna bow up on me, and tell me if I don't do this, that, and the other, how he's gonna put hands on me in the whole 9 yards. But unlucky for him, but lucky for me, my female cousin was there. And she turned to him and said, "You ain't gonna put a hand on a that." And that whole party turned on him like that. That was the easiest patient assessment I ever had in my whole life, because that whole party had turned on him. And they go, "Oh, because she kind of vouched for me, and also now it's cool."
Right.
And so it went on that way. But first responders also, we train our folks to be mindful of the fact that the anxiety level that our bystanders might have, particularly family, could be just high enough towards it might elicit interruptions or just anxious questions, and the like. Especially for the fellas. The fellas tend to be, when they're afraid, they tend to want to, toughen up.
Okay.
Instead of showing that they're fearful and anxious. I see where more of the women are more expressive of the concern and will say, "I'm afraid," and "I'm worried." But guys tend to default, towards the, "I'm afraid," so I'm gonna talk tough.
Yeah.
And so, be mindful of your own headspace. I would say then, when in those emergencies and when the crews arrive, and know that we really are there to help, and that's what they're trained to do. And if they ever suspected that they were getting something less than the kind of care that they expected, call, fire and rescue headquarters, call AMR, call Metro. I promise you someone will take that call and deal with that issue, deal with that problem. I can flat guarantee you that.
Thank you. So, Lexi, let's bring you in now. So, once, let's say, the first responder has come to the scene and they've decided that a patient needs to go to the hospital. So, the family members are yelling, well, so-and-so needs to go to the hospital. Not the emergency hospital, but they need psychiatric care. And they're kind of forcing that, they should get psychiatric care. How does that work? Can they recommend that the person goes to a facility, or?
Sure. So the family themselves, we have several facilities in the community, psychiatric hospitals who take walk-ins. So those places that take walk-ins, the family can essentially drive the person there, and they'll do an assessment for that person. See if they need inpatient, they might direct them to outpatient services. The other thing is we also have quite a few psychiatric lines in the community. So you can call, maybe it's a suicide prevention line, or there's also a text message one. I can't remember what the text number is, but you can kind of text to talk to some people, because some people prefer text.
Well, I know the suicide prevention hotline number is 1-800 or 1-866-273-TALK, right?
Yes.
Is it 66 or 88 or 800?
Got me on that one.
Well, I don't know the first three, but as long as you got the 273-TALK, you'll be good.
Yes.
Okay.
So those are some options that family members can have to get their loved ones assessed for psychiatric issues.
So normally would they take them to the emergency room first? If there was say the police came out, the fire truck came out, the person needs to go somewhere, do they go to emergency room?
So if the call was for this individual who's having the psychiatric crisis, the standard is that they would take them to emergency room to make sure that there's no medical things going on.
Okay.
However, if you're a family member and one of your loved ones is having a psychiatric crisis and they're willing to get help, your best option is to take them directly to a psychiatric facility, because then their crisis is dealt with right then and there, versus them going to the ER first.
And waiting up to 3 days, right?
Right. And waiting for an assessment, waiting for a bed, this and that in the emergency room. So if your loved one is willing to get help, your best bet is to contact a psychiatric facility and take them directly there for assessment.
And so what would be a psychiatric facility for them to call if they
Sure.
needed to?
So some off the top of my head that I can think of, there's Desert Parkway Behavioral Hospital, there's Seven Hills, Spring Mountain,
Southern Hills.
And then right next door, Rawson Mill is our state one, but right next door they have kind of like an outpatient center.
Southern Nevada Adult Mental Health.
Southern Nevada Adult Mental Health, and I believe that's at 6161 East Charleston.
So what we developed though is, in light of, just in keeping with your question, so folks who call in the 911 system, with the program that we built, Las Vegas Fire and Rescue in partnership with CHIPS, funded by the state, is typically in those 911 calls for psychiatric emergencies, that in the past, the standard is that's a go straight to the emergency room, no two ways about it. There was just no alternatives to it. What this new program is that we're developing is now we have a licensed clinical social worker who rides on an ambulance for those psychiatric emergencies. So that person who calls 911 and says, I'm having dark thoughts, my grip is getting weaker.
Okay, so wait. So if someone calls 911 and they say that they're having suicidal ideations or whatever, right? When the 911 call goes to the fire department, they give that information, and then the social worker rides with them.
Now,
possibly.
Now, so that's the program that we're piloting now.
Okay.
So in the past, it would be just that you get law enforcement and perhaps medical to come out on that call, and that would almost always end up being a transport to the emergency room, and that's where that legal hold, where you could be held against your will because you've communicated suicidal ideation, is good for 72 hours. So you could wait 72 hours for a mental health assessment.
Okay.
And the doctor can renew that, beyond that. So we've had people who've called 911 saying, look, I need help, who've not seen somebody for 3, 4, 5 days until a case manager comes out and assesses. Well, the problem with that is that if you raised your hand and said, look, I need help, but help doesn't come for 3, 4, 5 days, the lesson you learned is maybe you don't want to ask for help again.
Right.
And maybe you suffer through that on your own. So with this program, having that licensed clinical social worker right on the ambulance for those explicitly 911 calls for psychiatric emergencies, now we can do both the medical screening with the paramedic and the EMT, but also with the licensed clinical social worker, they can do that mental health screening. And if the patient is screened and basically safe enough to bypass the emergency room, we take them straight to the mental health facility. That way they can be assessed in the
Like
time.
if there's no injury or
Exactly.
the vitals are good.
We make sure there's no mimics.
Any medical
Right.
conditions or
We
anything
make
like
sure it's
that.
not mimicking like a tumor, or make sure it's not mimicking stuff like low blood sugar or something like that. And with that in place, by getting those people to the mental health facility in the time of crisis, that assessment is the real one you need to know if that patient needs inpatient treatment, if they need to stay at the hospital, or if when everything settles down, the clinician determines, let's set you up with outpatient. Can you come back tomorrow or the next 4 Tuesdays or the next 2 or 3 days? They can set up that outpatient kind of treatment, but you really lose the benefit of a really clear assessment if it's done hours, if not days, after the crisis.
And then the other issue that we run into with going straight to emergency departments is a lot of times you're going through something in that moment, right?
Right.
And so you go to the emergency department, maybe the moment passes, and then you get released immediately. You don't even go on the 3-day hold. You get released immediately, but tomorrow a similar moment returns. And so in your mind, you're like, well, I went to the ER, the most acute place that I could be for my issue, and they couldn't fix me.
Right.
And now this is happening again. Now you're more susceptible to attempts of suicide and suicide completion. Whereas if you go, either if you get this unit who has a social worker who can be there to intervene, or if you go directly to a psychiatric facility, you have individuals who can assess you, kind of talk you to the process, where you understand that it's a process. So tomorrow you may feel like this, or this may be happening, this is what you can do. But when you go to the ER, it's like, that's the place where they go, you to get fixed immediately, right? And so that doesn't happen. Going to a psychiatric facility, whether that's by this CRT unit or by a walk-in, is the best option.
So is it safe to say that if someone does a 911 call, that the community can then request, if it's a psychiatric issue, they can request to have a social worker present?
No. So
They have to hope maybe they get one.
They have to hope maybe they get one, exactly.
Okay. Because this is a pilot.
It's a pilot. And
It's a pilot.
Yeah, and we're trying to grow it and expand it, but we're getting it proofed and making sure that our destination facilities can accommodate, the extra, traffic that we're bringing them alike. So we're growing it, and we're in the second phase of the state subgrant, and so we're expanding it now to where now we'll be able to probably, set up, instead of 1 unit for 18 hours, now we're going to do 2 units at peak time hours of 12, during the day. So it'll be on east and west ends of town, and we're trying to expand the footprint of that to go further, into the valley.
Are there more like psychiatric issues late in the night? So like what the social workers need to know? No, they're at
No.
anytime.
Go ahead.
They're I would say like evening time, probably between 2 and 8.
I think so. Here's the craziest thing, just between us. Fire and emergency call volume is the most bizarre thing ever. You would think that Friday nights and Saturday nights would be like the busiest for everything. They're not. Tuesday and Thursday in the early afternoon is the busiest time for every call, for psychiatric calls, for chest pains, for strokes, for you name it. Every single call for whatever, traffic accident, all of them, assaults, all those, for whatever reason, Tuesdays and Thursdays tend to be the spikes for all calls. I can't even start to guess why. Oh yeah, good job. I want to hear good.
Well, you know, a lot of people working jobs they don't want to work at. They start on Monday, they
I was thinking
mad.
that too.
Right.
Right?
Right,
So Tuesday is going down, right?
Exactly.
Then Thursday, they can't wait until Friday, so they're mad.
You said, okay, it's hump day. So you feel like a moment for free because it's hump day. You say Thursday's not hump day. So
That's why.
Friday.
I'm back in the doldrums.
Thursday.
I got chest pain.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
So I want to make sure that we are ready for a caller to call in and see if they can win these tickets to the Men of Vocals concert, which is October 11th
Yes.
at the Fremont Country Club. Caller can call in at 702-647-3688. And the question is, what do you do when you hear an ambulance? What is the first thing you do? First caller with the correct answer will receive 2 tickets to Men of Vocals. So now I wanted to talk about, while we're waiting for that caller, I brought Marc here because I wanted to talk about the cathartic process of music therapy. And so I researched and found, because I knew I was right. I just wanted to make sure I had some empirical evidence.
Okay.
So I went on the NAMI website, which is the National Alliance on Mental Health, and research shows benefits of music therapy for various mental health conditions, including depression, trauma, and schizophrenia, to name a few. Music acts as a medium for processing emotions, trauma, and grief.
Big time.
But music can also be utilized as a regulatory or calming agent for anxiety.
Very much so.
So, Marc, there are 4 major interventions to music therapy,
Okay.
and they are lyric analysis,
Yes.
improvisation music playing or playing an instrument, active music listening, and songwriting. And so you do all 4 of these.
Yes.
So I would like to know the benefit for you in your process.
I would first say that, you know, clearly music is a universal language. So it's totally relatable to all people, for one. Lyric analysis, that's like really, really powerful because the lyrical content of a song speaks to people.
Well, I had to analyze last night.
She's referring to
I
my
listened to
record
that
last
song.
night, right?
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, whether you're happy, whether you're sad, angry, horny, whatever it is, lyrics speak to you, right?
Sure.
And whatever state you're in, normally you're trying to sift through your library of songs that is relating to what it is that you're feeling, right? What you would hope is, if a person is mentally disturbed in some sort of form, that they would want to gravitate to records that are going to make them feel better.
Right.
And that lyrical content can actually talk you out of something that you're thinking that's not good for you.
Sure.
Now, I'm not suggesting it's medicine, so my disclaimer is it's very healing, you know, especially because I've had many people come up to me and say, oh my God, you saved my life, or,
Yes.
you know, or I had my first kid with your song, you know. And so, yeah, lyrical content, yeah, that's very, very deep. Then you spoke on what was on the last one? I think it was just songwriting.
It was
itself.
songwriting. You've
Yeah.
written a few songs, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, quite a few. But songwriting, I think, is very therapeutic for me because it allows me to vent anything that's happening in my life.
Sure.
You know, I mean, I write songs all the time about something I might have gone through, something I'm going through, or something someone else is going through. So being able to structure a song around just life experiences is very, very therapeutic.
Absolutely.
The power of empathy that
Yeah.
comes through with good songwriting
Yeah.
is through the roof because
Big time.
the right song can allow you to feel, understood.
Absolutely.
You feel connected, and,
Very much so.
and that sense of connectedness is massive
Yeah.
for social and mental health, or put differently, the pride that good songwriting, like your Earth, Wind, and Fires and your Donny Hathaways and your James, the pride that good songwriting engenders too.
Absolutely. And I'd be willing. You good?
Good. Oh, well, we have a caller.
Oh, we
So
do?
Okay.
Awesome.
let's see if the caller has the right answer to the question and see who's won these tickets. Caller, are you there? Hello, who are we speaking with? Hello, thank you for calling. It's Where I Am. And so, yes, what is the first thing you do when you hear an ambulance? You pull to the right. Yes! Congratulations! We'll see you at the Men of Vocals concert at the Fremont Country Club
Yes.
next
October
Friday, October 11th. And I'll place you on hold, and we'll make sure you get those tickets.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling in. Mark, don't put those headphones away. 'Cause
Okay.
I would like for you to sing.
Oh, you got it.
Can you
All right.
sing something from your new song
Well,
or your new CD?
well, I'm working on a new CD, but I'll sing a clip of something that I'm working on.
Did you want to sing it to me, or are you just gonna sing?
I'll sing it to you, though.
Okay.
My mother told me it'd be hard to let go. She said she knew some things about life I didn't know. And like a child I tried to fuss and fight, because I ultimately knew she was right. That life is a game, and the ones who play stay sane. And the truth, it never lies. But she says to me, whatever you do, don't cry. There you go.
Oh, wow, beautiful!
Thank you very much.
Wow.
Thank you. I want to thank all my guests for being here. TJ Thump is passing out. Thank you, Lexi, for coming down.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Chief Stevenson, for
You're
being
so
here.
very welcome. Anytime you want to come through, we're more than happy to do so.
Wonderful. Thank you, because you will be invited back.
Okay.
And thank you again, Marc Nelson,
My pleasure.
for being here. Any last words before we?
No, just thank you for having me. I really enjoyed listening and learning. I'm gonna stop trailing these ambulance, and I think that as you are putting a new, what is it called, social workers? Is it? Maybe you want to add a singer to sing a song. We'll just sit through it. Yeah. We'll find the right song for this particular individual.
No downside.
All right, pleasure. Thank you.
Love it. It's Where I Am. Thank you.